Hey, howdy, and welcome all to the Big and Bright Podcast. My name is Nick. This here next to me is James.
Howdy.
How you doing, man?
Pretty good.
You're looking snazzy. I'm a little casual today, man. I don't even have a button up or anything like that. I'm one of the people today. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
My hair looks great.
We don't really want you
I'm
here.
super big. My hair is feathered and beautiful, and so I'm happy. That's where I like to be.
All right.
I like to sort of exist in that space of like I'm approachable, but I'm clearly better looking than
So we're already done with the podcast. What you're saying? I'm not going to deal with this guy the whole time. Hayden, get him.
You can't shut me down, Hayden. You can't turn me off. This is for the people, right? As always, guys, you can follow us on the Twitter sphere.
Yeah, just social media.
Twitterverse.
Just whatever social media it is.
The Tickins and the Talkins. We're all over the place, man. We're
there.
Yeah, it's all there. You're pointing at nothing. You're literally pointing at nothing right now.
Don't let them peek behind the curtain, Nick. Eventually, something will be here.
We don't want to ruin the magic, right? The magic of two weird guys coming on and complaining about international politics as it pertains to Texas. Here on this show, we do talk about all things Texas, and we have got a lot to get to today. It's not been the busiest news week, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, but I mean, the substance that gets released has been pretty good topics. We actually had to narrow it down pretty hard this time.
It's been coming out in kind of a slow trickle, but when you get there's been a lot of good stuff. It just hasn't been coming at you through a fire hose. So we had to kind of put some things together, but we have a great show for you set up today. We're going to be talking about standardized testing in the state of Texas. Should it be a thing? My opinion is a little bit more nuanced than it has been on other topics on the standardized test deal. We're also going to be talking about cruises and cruise lines as it pertains to COVID vaccine passports. Recently, some developments in Florida have been happening there. We're going to cover what Texas should be doing about that. We're going to be talking about the StarSpangled Banner Act.
Oh, say, can you see?
StarSpangled Banner Act, which is headed for Greg Abbott's desk. Should he sign it? Should he not? Probably. We're going to go then and talk about some Chicago stuff, talk about police pursuit policy in Chicago. Should Texas follow suit? Probably not. But we're going to cover that for you anyway today. A lot of good stuff coming at you, but we're going to start today with the big one, friends. Today's big and bright idea. All right, so today's big and bright idea, standardized tests in Texas education.
Woo! Get your heart beating.
It's going to be crazy. You are married to an educator, aren't you?
Allegedly.
You're married to someone who works in the school system. We have a lot of friends who work in I feel like every woman that we know is either a teacher or a nurse.
Yeah, that's how it is for our church group.
You're married to a teacher. I'm married to a nurse. We have a lot of friends in our church groups that are either teachers or nurses, and it's just we know a lot of teachers. I know a lot of men that are teachers. I've got two men that were in my wedding that are both teachers now, right? So education is a big deal, and it's amazing how I can see people pivot, right, on education So I'll know people that are really staunch Republicans.
Yeah.
That when you start talking about teachers unions, they're like, whoa, no. The teachers union, those are good. Those are good unions. I don't like but those are good unions.
We don't even have them in Texas.
No, yeah, and there's a lot of people that don't like that, right?
Well, we don't have them in Texas. So there's no reason to like or not. We don't have them in Texas.
I know a staunch right-wing guy, like just short of right-wing death squads kind of guy, and will not vote for Dan Crenshaw because he voted to cut teachers' pensions.
Oh.
And I'm like, really? Okay. That's first of all, that's not what Crenshaw argued, but also, really, you're just gonna shift, right? You're gonna shift on that.
If that's your pinpoint.
Okay,
all right,
that's fine. But I mean, I understand why education is a big deal because you're talking about our kids, right?
Yeah.
And we both have kids. Neither of our kids are at the age where they're going to school, but you inevitably start thinking about that when you become a parent. Who's going to be teaching my kid? What are they going to be teaching them, right? What is my role as a parent? What's my duty of care when it comes to all this?
Let them be the babysitter and never worry about it. That's how you do it.
This all kind of centers around, right? The issue that this sort of orbits is this issue of standardized testing.
Yep.
And I think, again, like I said, my opinion on this is more nuanced than it has been in other episodes. I think that there is a role to play in some level of standardization, but I don't like the setup that we have right now. And I'll explain why.
What are you referring to? Yeah.
Yeah, so we're referring to the STAR test, and this is something that came to the Texas Congress fairly recently. James got the
It's
notes
called
on
Texas House Bill 764. It's been sponsored by Brooks Landgraf, which is a cool name, by the way. It's a representative from Odessa. Basically, what it boils down to is this bill would eliminate any statewide test that is not federally required and eliminates end-of-course exams for high school students. Excuse me. If you don't know about the STAR test, if you don't live in Texas, congratulations, because the STAR test sucks. What the STAR test is an extra test that students starting, I think, around 3rd or 4th grade start taking at the end, and it's over reading, math. Don't think there's a history exactly.
What does STAR stand for?
I don't know.
I'm gonna look that
stupid
up.
stuff.
I'm trying to look that up. Right. It's like State of Texas Academic something.
Yeah. Well, the whole crux of the thing is that a lot of teachers and administrators and representatives have been very against the STAR test, mainly because what it does, or how Texas has scored it for public funding, if you have lower scores, you get less public funding from the state. Higher scores, more funding. That is assuming that the students have the same type of ability. Maybe they are just different kind of quality, because you're kind of guaranteeing like, oh, all kids should fit in a nice, neat box. And if that neat box does not achieve this score, then you didn't do your job, teacher. When in fact, the tax test, or I'm sorry, that was how we took it.
We took it when it was tax.
It
is now STAR, which, by the way, State of Texas Assessment of Academic Readiness. So that's STAAR.
Yay.
Yeah, that's what it is. Now the STAR test, right?
Yeah.
And I remember taking tax when I was
tax and toss.
It was tax when I was taking it. It then became toss, and now
no. It's toss first, then tax.
First? I don't even care.
Yeah.
I do remember taking these tests when I was a little kid. When I was in elementary school.
We're super old, so it was like eons ago.
That was we had just invented fire when we were taking the TOS tax test. Now the STAR test. So this is basically an assessment to see how,
Did you learn anything this year?
Yeah. What did you learn this year, and did this work? The STAR test, I think, is an altogether different thing. Now, I'll talk about how what do you think about this? And I mean, you've got a perspective because you're married to an educator, so you've got a perspective that I just don't have.
I agree with getting rid of the STAR test. Maybe something else should be put instead of it. But then again, are we just replacing the toss with the tax, or the tax with the toss? All right, now we're replacing that with STAR. Nothing really changed. They kept changing the name, but nothing really changed.
Yeah.
And the whole crux of it was you never really learn anything, because whenever I was studying, teachers have guided study periods specifically just over the tax test things. It was basically learning how to out manipulate the test. You didn't learn anything when it came to, and the teachers, I remember they hated this answer, but we constantly would say it, and they got to the point where they gave up. Because when it came to reading comprehension, what is the main idea of this passage? You basically would say, what's the longest one? That's it. And more times than not, you were correct. You didn't have to know a thing about what you just read. You didn't have to read it. It's the longest one. It's like, that's not a good strategy,
true, right?
But it was a great strategy.
Even as an adult, I took my test to get my real estate license. Same thing. If I found an answer that was long and I clicked that, at least 3/4 of the time you're correct.
Yeah.
Right. It's just,
if you have to guess, that's a great guess
for sure. And again, there is such a thing. This is the weird thing. There is such a thing as test taking strategies, right? Like, for example, when you take the SATs, there are courses that you can take about the SATs that have absolutely nothing to do with the subject matter. It's all about how to take the test. What is the best strategy for things like time management? What is the best strategy for things like guessing, going back and reviewing? If
they ask you this is what they're asking for. So whatever answer says that magic wording, just pick it. I don't care if you know or not.
And so you can make the case that, there are kids out there that probably know less about the subject matter, but are better test takers.
Yeah. When you don't change the test, it makes it easy to, or not easy, but it makes it to where it's you're able to attack it a lot better without actually having to learn a dang thing.
So I'm not in full agreement when it comes to this concept of, I'm a bad test taker. I understand that is a thing, right? Somebody can be a bad test taker. They get nervous when they take tests. I mean, I would say maybe that I probably fall into that category, right? I don't.
You mean you struggle with that part where we ask what you know?
Well, no, I struggle with things like the timed element of it. I struggle with overthinking things, second guessing myself. I struggle with that. But you are correct, right? That's not an excuse. To me, I'm like, I feel that way, but I'm not gonna say, well, I'm a bad test
Well, I
taker.
know what 2 plus 2 is until you put it on a question. It's like, whoa, why are you asking what 2 plus 2 is?
The reality is, if you know the content, right? If you know the content and you know what you're expecting, then you can pass these tests, right? And it really is a certain level of what is your level of comprehension here. My issue with standardized testing is different than that. Now, I want you guys to understand something. I think tests are a good thing. I think tests that are relatively standardized are a good thing for the individual classes that you're taking in school. Right now,
because it makes it objective. Because if I just did like, well, let's do an oral exam, everybody's oral exam is different. Oh, that he or she, they seem competent to me, they pass.
Yeah.
Well, that's not objective. You're now leaving it to subjective. So if I say the magic thing, like we've seen across this nation, what if the teacher happens to be very left and the student is right, and this thing has a kind of a political matter to it, maybe a thin one, but enough of it to where like, oh, the teacher saw it this way, the student sees it the opposite way. Both have facts in their camp, but the teacher said, well, I mean, now there's the right winger. It's like, well, no, because you left it subjective. It was objective, like, what did we do in 1776? Declaration of Independence. There we go. All right, next step. Like, we're just going to move on and tick these boxes. I don't give a crap about your politics.
Yeah.
I just need to know if you answer the question. Because this came up constantly whenever it's for the bar test, for con law. Oh, people get pissed.
Yeah.
It's funny because the test taker or the test makers know they can fire off some rockets, especially when it gets to abortion. Oh, if I get you to say whatever you believe on abortion, oh, well, it shouldn't be. Well, it should be. The teacher, when we did like a small little prep course, like, we don't care. I don't care about your politics, and you don't care what I have to say about this. But right now, the law is for abortion, and she would spell it out. I don't care if you think it should be expanded. I don't care if you think it should be reduced. If you decide to go in your politics for your answer choices, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
Know what the law is and move on. They're going to specifically ask these questions to get a rise out of you and throw you off your game. That's what they love to do.
Here's the deal. There's a lot of left-leaning people in academia, right? And with the bar tests, with the bar exams, you see that, right? You see that in a great deal. But I think you're really onto something here. The problem that I have with standardized testing is when I went to school, I had teachers. And those teachers taught the class. And those teachers designed the curriculum. But for some reason, we're not allowed to let those teachers assess us at the end of the class, determining what we learned. Now, here's the thing. Teachers are hired to do a job. That job is to educate and, yes, probably assess whether or not you learned the material. Do teachers have biases? Yes. But you need to be able to put those aside for your job. Okay?
Yeah, and a lot of them can do that. It's easy to do. It's like, I don't really care, especially when you teach math. There's no politics in math. It's math, either right or wrong.
But when you have the STAR exam, you're literally having the state tell teachers what they need to teach.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, why do we need teachers if that's the case?
Well, to be fair, from the state standpoint, this is me just kind of being devil's advocate here. Well, it's public schools, because private schools don't have to take these tests. Only public schools, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Well, if you're a public school, where are you getting your funding?
The state.
So why shouldn't the state have any kind of say of what you should be
The
teaching
state
in
should
the
have
class?
the state should have a say in who gets hired. Right?
No, that's the district. The state has no idea who hires district by district. But when it comes to what do our students know, we want them to know this amount from our Texas schools, this basic thing.
No,
What do
sorry.
you think?
Sorry. A teacher is a trustee of the state, right? If you're going to standardize anything, make standardized tests for teachers. Okay, that's a little bit different because you're not directly going to the student. You're not directly telling the teachers, you must teach X, right? You must teach them this. Because here's the thing. It occurred to me when you said this, right? What if the question is, when was the United States founded? Right? Well, if we're doing some certain things that have been injected into schools lately, right? Like CRT, what if the state thinks the answer is 1619?
Well, it
When the
depends.
answer is
What are you
actually
asking? Are you asking about the America as we know it now, or you're asking about when did we land here first? Because 1607 is the first year.
I know, but the thing is that has now become something that is no longer objective, right? The founding of America.
That's why we're trying to get rid of CRT.
When was America founded? But again, if you have a STAR test, if you have a standardized test, Here's the issue. If a district says, hey, we're getting rid of CRT, like they did in Southlake, right? They had a vote in Southlake to get rid of critical race theory in education. If the STAR test, right, meaning the statewide exam, uses theory based on CRT, you don't have a choice anymore. Right? Because you have to teach the kid what's on the STAR exam. So you're taking it out of the hands of districts. You're taking it out of the hands of teachers. You're taking it out of the hands of parents that no longer have a choice.
Well, before even CRT got there, I had teachers who were, of course, they would teach along the tax test because that's what it was when we took it. And they would say, when this question gets asked with these magic words, this is the answer. Every time, this is the answer. And like, you're not learning it. It's like, okay, good. So like, this gets students tripped up all the time. Students have no idea what they're what they're asking of the student. So the teacher just stepped in and goes, hey, we're not being recorded right now.
Yeah.
If this is your question, this is always the answer. And sometimes it's always going to be B if this gets asked. Because every time they've asked the past few years, it's been B. Well, I don't care what B is. B could say Fruit Loops. It's the Fruit Loops then. Yeah. That's what it is. Just go with it and move on.
For me, I understand the argument about you're not actually teaching kids to learn, you're teaching them to memorize answers. I get that. That's not even the most important argument to me. The most important argument to me is who gets to determine what's on this test? Because if this was a math exam, okay, right? I mean, math is probably the most objective out of all of these. But if you're talking about science, if you're talking about literature, if you're talking about civics, if you're talking about anything other than basically just math, right? You're entering into a place where how you frame the question really matters, right? One of the best essays I've ever read is an essay called "Men Without Chests." It's by C.S. Lewis, and the beginning of that essay literally gives a framing of an English teacher, and it shows that the way he frames the question actually determines these kids' philosophies at later dates, like life philosophies. So my question is, who is framing the questions for my kids? Who is telling my kids what is acceptable academic knowledge and who isn't? If I'm going to put my kid in school, I'm putting my kid under the influence of a trustee, i.e. the teacher. And if the teacher doesn't have any say in how they structure the curriculum or how they assess my students or my children's knowledge, then the teacher doesn't ultimately matter. And there's really no point in choosing one teacher over another because they're all basically they all have to adhere to the same set of rules.
So what you're saying is almost as if you push standardized testing, you effectively get rid of the teachers.
You get rid of the teachers
because then they're just bots.
Yeah,
put anybody in front.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of teachers would disagree with you on that, but if you're pushing it over and over, I can see where you're saying eventually down the road, that could possibly be it.
Okay, I want to talk to the teachers because I know we have some teachers that listen to this show. I want to make something clear. I like you, okay? I think that teaching is an important job, but there is an over-emotional histrionics that we get to when we talk about teachers, and they're like, we're heroes. I'm like, no, some of you are garbage. I'm sorry. Yeah. There are garbage teachers out there. They absolutely exist. And if you're a bad teacher and people say, well, no, I'm a hero for being a teacher. No. You have to be good at your job. I'm sorry.
Well, also, if you're self-declaring yourself a hero, I'm not a hero.
But the thing is, if I want to have a good teacher and I say, hey, I'm going to put my kid in this school and I want him to have this teacher because this is a good teacher, it no longer matters.
How you pick professors in college. It's like, this guy's good, this girl's good. Oh, I don't like this person.
It no longer matters when you have a STAR exam.
No.
Because the teachers, regardless of how they are, they have to teach the same thing. And they have to, and we no longer have faith, right? The state no longer has faith in the teachers that it's assigning. That's what the state is telling you, teachers, when they put out the STAR exam, is they don't have faith in your ability to teach. They're going to say, no, you have to teach this, otherwise it's not acceptable academic material.
Well, the bill has actually passed the Texas House. It passed with 136 votes to 6. Mm-hmm. So it's looking pretty good. It's going to the Senate. It's actually on track to be passed within this legislative session. But the constant balance act that you have to do, though, because like we discussed, every district's different. Every school, elementary school B, elementary school A, they could live in the exact same city, but have two different philosophies of how they work.
Yep.
And that's fine because it's up to the district. If you live there, you get to have some kind of say. It's why you do local matters. Mm-hmm. By the way, you kind of want to be at those PTA meetings and those those committee meetings.
That's
just
why
what the heck's going on in your
That's
school.
why we started this show, right? That's why this show began.
But the constant balance test is if there are no standardized tests, i.e. STAR, how will we know where Texan students stand?
Because of their GPA, because of the
the
grades
GPA
they get in their class.
But if the GPA could be skewed. Because if you're taking AP classes or dual credit classes, that 4.0 is now extended to a higher amount.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, what if that student didn't have the means to actually take the dual credit? He or she just takes it English at school. So now his is a 4.0, but you have students that are actually doing college credit. So now you're actually higher.
What do you mean you don't have the means to do dual credit? I did dual credit in high school. It didn't cost me anything extra. It was just I said I want to take this class. I signed up for it. I had to take an aptitude test, and I did.
Well, in ours, you had to actually pay for it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, not necessarily in favor of that. I think if you want
AP costs you nothing until you want to take the exam. That actually will give you college credit. If you don't have money for the exam, these are simple fees, but sometimes people are just in the means where it's paycheck to paycheck.
You're talking about college. You're talking about college credit. I'm all for having AP classes. I think you should have an aptitude test. Well, actually, no. See, because then that's another standardized test. Right? That's another standardized test.
The constant balance. We don't. How'd you know where you stood with a standardized test?
Here's the thing.
How do you know you're college ready with a standardized test?
Here's what I think. This is what I think. Okay, I think you should have access to AP and DC dual credit classes.
And a lot do now because my nephew he graduated with almost 2 years of school already.
Here's the issue. The issue is we're teaching people to not be self-reliant. We're teaching people not to examine themselves. Give the students options for AP classes and dual credit classes. Let them take it. Let them take it without an exam. And if they are not up to snuff, fail them. That's how you deal with the problem, right? We're so afraid to fail.
But if I could have known that I wasn't actually up to snuff with the standardized test, then I wouldn't have done that. I would have done regular course if I wasn't good enough for AP.
Then make them retake it. I mean, the point is that if you...
A lot of those AP classes are done in senior year. Retaking it is not an option. You want to graduate. You're shrugging it off, and I get what you're saying, but they have to have some sort of knowledge. Do I have enough merit to get in this? Do I have enough to actually make it to the class? If I don't, stop lying to me and let me take a class that's more my speed, and maybe I'll just have to take that actual college down the road if I decide to go.
This is where counselors come into play. I mean, I'm sorry, that's what counselors are there to do, right? Counselors are there to counsel. They're there to guide students. And so if you have a counselor that's involved in their student's life and they know these things and they've seen their grades from their other classes and they say, hey, I want to take this AP class, the counselor needs to sit down with this student and say, listen, if you're going to take this AP class, that's fine. Just know you're going to have to work really hard because you're not scoring very well in this particular area. I would advise taking this other class and getting this credit, right? But the classes that you take and the scores that you get in those classes should be the only thing that dictates your academic future, in my opinion. Now, should the tests be standardized? Yes, but they should be standardized by the teacher based on the curriculum that they designed.
You're going to tell me all the teachers in Texas somehow agree with this is our curriculum and say good to go?
No. What I mean is they should be standardized for all students by the same teacher, right? So I think
that's basically what it is now. You got someone who's the secretary of our education. He or she writes that up, and then they send out the test. It's basically what happens now. Does that person have educational background? No. That's usually why people get irritated about Texas.
But the Secretary of Education does not design the curriculum. That's the thing. When exactly, the person that designs the curriculum should design the test.
Then you're back to having just finals, which are just
yes. I mean that makes sense to me. Because when you hire, people's like, well, what teachers are different? You have the risk of hiring bad teachers. You do. You're true. That's true. But a teacher is a trustee of the state. Okay. So instead of making teachers, basically turning teachers into bots and saying, teach this, in which case you might as well teach someone with a computer, right? Teachers' jobs could be obsolete very quickly with this idea of standardized testing. Okay. Instead of making a standardized test, hire better teachers. Have better screening processes for the teachers that you hire. Make sure that they're qualified to teach the things that they're going to teach, and let them then, once you've hired them, once you've screened them, trust them to design the test centered around the curriculum that they designed. And also, and I'm sorry, teachers, but teachers should be easier to fire if they're not doing a good job.
No, in Texas they are.
They are.
Because again, we don't have a union.
Exactly, right? Teachers unions is
Because we're a right to work state.
yes, we're a right to work state, but teachers are notoriously difficult to fire, and I think that's a problem all over the place.
Not here. That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, maybe some other state, but not here in Texas.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah. So you're complaining about something that doesn't exist though in Texas.
Okay, but okay,
because the STAR test also doesn't apply to any other teachers that are outside of Texas.
That is true, right? But if they're here's the thing: if they are easy to fire, right? If you say, okay, we have a bad teacher, they're easy to get rid of, and we have proper, decent. I just smacked the mic there. We have proper, decent screening for our teachers. We don't need a STAR test. We don't need any sort of standardization when it comes to how we educate our kids. If we are entrusting the right people,
right, and that's what apparently the House is actually. They agreed with that because the teachers and parents, by the way, are behind this bill, and the House, like I said, is 136-6. Only 6 people said they didn't like it. That's a very small minority.
Yeah.
I think because a lot of people had problems with the tax. TOS, STAR, whatever name they put to it, they've had a problem with it because for Texans, if you're in 11th grade, you have to take your last tests for STAR. It was for us tax. Well, if you don't pass that, you have to take it again your senior year, and if you don't pass it, you don't graduate. Mm-hmm. A test that has no bearing on your high school curriculum at all can prevent you from graduating. That was the biggest issue because sometimes students just can't get it.
Yeah.
Because it's a test that they didn't really go over in detail in their classrooms because it doesn't pertain to the actual classroom. It's like, oh, well, you need to learn this, and this. Okay, now that you got that, we're actually going to start doing our class now. Because there's 20 minutes, we got to give it to tax test. Now that we're done with that, we're actually teach the class now.
I don't want the state telling my teachers what my kid needs to be taught.
But we do it all the time nationally.
Yeah.
Because you cannot get into college without taking the ACT test or the SAT test.
You want a controversial opinion? I think the ACT test and the SAT test should be done away with.
Then I'm with you on the
GPA,
jerk.
GPA, AP credits,
GPA
essay
means nothing.
Extracurriculars. You should underwrite these students, right? It should.
No.
I'm sorry. You're just trying to make it easier for people to. You're trying to make it easier for people to make quick assessments. You're talking about our children's education. This should involve some effort, right? It should. Do you know how much underwriting you have to go through in order to get a mortgage loan, even with a credit score? Right, but when it comes to getting into college, it's literally just what's a score on a test that was standardized and written by somebody who never educated my kid. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous.
A lot of colleges taking a lot of applications, and you got to be able to boil it down to something. Is it fair all the time? No.
No, it's not fair all the time. But you can't.
We have a lot of colleges. Affirmative action is legal. It's legal.
That's also true.
So
that's also unfair. But that's a separate issue.
It is unfair, but it allows students who they presume are lesser because of the color of their skin, and they get to tweak the score a little bit. So you're still the standardized test. You just tweak it for that person's color, which is a little racist. But that's how it's at least been going for the past decades.
I think, and if you want to make the case that we, meaning parents and people who are not necessarily in academia, should have access to the necessary qualifications and how the process that colleges go through for determining eligibility. Yeah, I think that's fine. And if you see a college that says, hey, we're going to take into account like some sort of social score, like they were doing at, what is it? It's not Harvard. Harvard was getting sued for kicking Asians out. There was a college at one point that was saying they were giving a score for if you're black or if you're from a minority.
The score. It's probably one of the Ivy Leaguers.
And if you see something like that, then say, hey, I ain't going to that college, or I'm not going to apply, right?
Yeah.
But we should have access to the steps that they go through in order to determine what qualifies you for attendance. But I'm sorry, I don't think the SAT or the ACT should be a part of that.
The only issue I have with the SAT and ACT is that the prep courses, because it's standardized, we know what's going on, yet people still fail it all the time or don't get a great score.
Yeah.
So the prep courses, if you've ever taken one of those, they're not cheap.
No, they're not.
If you have the money, you can afford them. Great. But mostly what they teach, because I've done a few of these, because I've taken a few standardized tests in my time, they just teach you, just like we talked about earlier, to spot the tricks. Here's what they're going to say to try to trip you up. When they say this, think X.
Yeah.
Oh, X is now D. Yep. Sorry.
Like I said,
Answer D. I hit the mic myself too.
like I said, it's more of a test-taking strategy course than it is a materials course.
Right, but if you're on notice on what you have to do, then that's just part of the game. It's just like with a credit card. What if you have cash and you're able to somehow afford everything with cash? That's great. If you buy a car with cash, the first thing to do is, well, let me check your credit score. Oh, your credit score is crappy. Or I want to buy a house, and somehow you have that money and just ready to go. Well, we have to do a credit check. Why? I have cash. We have to play the game.
No,
So it's part of the game.
The difference is though, and this is something I do know something about. In mortgaging, if you have a bad credit score, or sometimes you have no credit score, you can go find a bank that does what's called manual underwriting. And manual underwriting basically forces the bank to say, "Hey, I'm going to take the credit score out of it.
It's manual?
Yes.
I thought it was Manuel. Okay.
No, it's manual.
Wow.
It's manual
I
underwriting.
thought one guy just did all the work.
No. So, but that's what it is. So an underwriter actually goes in, they examine your documents, they examine your income, they examine your cash on hand, and they look at the person, not at a score, right? We should be able to do that with academia, right? At the very least, make the SAT and ACT optional and say, hey, I want to submit this application without an SAT and ACT score, and I want you to look at the stuff that matters. I want you to look at my GPA. I want you to look at my extracurriculars.
But what if that GPA
I want you to look at my,
skewed?
I want you to look at my essay. I want you to look at my I want you to look at my the AP courses and the AP credits that I have. That's the stuff that matters, because that's the stuff that you actually did in your academic career that had to do with the information that you acquired based on what you were taught. It is not information that somebody in the state is giving you, telling you this is what qualifies as acceptable academic material.
No,
that's
because what if the GPA is skewed? Because I mean, my high school back in the day, when I was about to graduate, I flipped a lid and I went to a teacher who I've known for most of my life because my sister had her. And I was complaining to her because what my school did, and we were supposed to be the academic school in the area. Like, if you really wanted to be college ready, you went to our school. Didn't mean it was actually it was a public school, but that was the one who prepared you best. Well, when my senior year happened, all of a sudden a new rule changed from our own school board. Basically said if you wrote your name on a piece of paper and turned in that, you could get no less than a 50. It's still a failing grade. But if your failing grades are all 50s and then you have one A in there, well, you can swap it for a C and still pass. So you got a passing grade. That's your GPA. Did you really get that passing grade? No, it's because your school's stupid policy said I couldn't fail you. And now you get these crappy grades and you get one decent one. Well, that averaged out to actually being an okay grade. So that's why I'm saying you can't go purely by GPA, because there's a lot of districts that do that. There's still in Texas a lot of students who can't be failed because whatever reason they said it hurts their feelings. I don't know what the crap their reasoning is, but it's stupid. Yeah. But that still exists. So you have to have something objective. Therefore, there's a standardized test.
The objectivity needs to happen at the level of how you hire your teachers and how you staff your schools.
But you just said you can't guarantee a teacher will be a good teacher. That's true.
You can't guarantee
this worker will be a good worker and not, hit something in the warehouse and knock everything down and lose millions of dollars. You didn't know that going in. He didn't say, I'm going to drive that forklift and crash and here we go. Well, no teacher's going to admit that.
Which is why you need some level of scrutiny, and you need to, and this is, we're getting in. I mean, the thing about this is that this is centered, this is a star around which orbits all sorts of things, like homeschooling, school choice, you
got me all agitated.
Pensions, unions, all of this stuff kind of applies to this. So again, there's a whole other argument that I could apply to this concept of the STAR test. And we could talk about school choice and how that could actually sort of use the market to measure your teachers. And that can kind of work itself out. Are things going to happen where people fall through the cracks? Yes, but guess what? People fall through the cracks all the time with the ACT and the SAT as it is. Well, yeah, right now.
I mean that's the usual argument of like, well, what if someone falls through the cracks? Like, well, we're a fallen world. I don't know if everybody's up to speed on that. We're a fallen world. Nothing's going to be perfect, and you can't discount the good because it's not great.
All right, summarize your thoughts. We got to get to the 3 outs. So summarize your thoughts in a sentence, and I'll do the same. What is your thoughts on this and it can be a long sentence, but one sentence.
There's a lot of commas in here.
There's a lot of commas in the sentence. That's fine. Give me your argument in a sentence.
I agree with getting rid of the STAR test, comma, but I do think there should be some objective tests to at least see where students lie when it comes to grades, period.
It is the responsibility of teachers, of administrators, school administrators, and parents to educate and assess the academic readiness of our students. It is not the responsibility of the state to determine what qualifies you as an academic success. Period.
That was a long sentence.
Let's do the 3 hot takes. All right, friends, 3 hot takes. Topic the first.
Florida v. Cruise Lines.
Topic the second.
StarSpangled Banner.
Topic the third.
Chicago.
Okay, it's a Texas podcast, but okay.
You'll
Let's
see.
start with what is it? COVID v
No, Florida v. Cruise Lines.
Florida v Ted Cruz. Okay, let's do this. That's why it's Texas, right?
No, not Ted Cruz. Cruise Lines.
Cruise Lines. Florida v Cruise
Spelled a
Lines.
little different.
Florida versus one of their biggest grossing industries.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Celebrity Cruise Lines, member, it's a cruise ship basically, will require 100% of their crew member and 95% of their passengers who will be on board to be fully vaccinated when the ship sets sail on a 7-night cruise in June. That's going to be the first cruise, major cruise, that is going to be ported at Fort Lauderdale at Florida. They have had volunteer cruises, by the way, if you didn't know, but they still have to require like a little checkbox of like, have you been around anybody with COVID? Do you feel any COVID kind of symptoms going on?
Yeah.
But still volunteer. Well, this is at odds because DeSantis, for those who don't know, because you don't live in Florida, said, we're not doing any type of that.
Yeah.
Business, government, don't care. No such thing as a vaccine passport will ever exist in our state. So this goes into effect on July 1. The cruise ship is like June 26th. So it's like, oh, well, I mean, technically the law's not there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you haven't signed it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's signed, but it doesn't go into effect until
No,
then.
that's dumb. That's ridiculous. It's the law's been signed. Follow the law.
But they're following the CDC. The CDC has said this is what you probably should do on a cruise ship. So they want to comply. But that when you comply with that, you violate Florida law. Mm-hmm. According to how Florida has it written in their
I just want to read this USA Today article about this, right? Let me go ahead and read this real quick. And this is kind of the point of my opinion on this, all right? It all boils down to this. Celebrity Cruises, the first cruise line to receive approval from the Center of Disease Control and Prevention to sail with paying passengers, but there's a complication, Florida law. Now let's focus in on one little area there. Celebrity Cruises is the first cruise line to receive approval from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention to sail with paying passengers. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention is not a governing body. Its approval means bagel. It means zero. It means nothing. The CDC's approval and $2.50 will get you a cup of coffee. It means nothing. And why we are treating it as if it is a governing body that is making actual policy that individuals or individual businesses ought to follow is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's an asinine thing.
I don't get why CDC has so much power. It's like, well, they're the experts who've been constantly wrong.
Yes.
They've flip-flopped so many times, I can't even keep up with it.
Yeah, so we follow on Twitter, like and subscribe.
Hey.
We follow on Twitter the Babylon Bee, and they recently had an article that said Dr. Fauci has heated debate with 2019 Dr. Fauci and 2020 Dr. Fauci.
Well, no, I saw something funny too. It was there's another Babylon Bee yesterday. By the way, it's a great follow if you have a chance. It's all satire. It's hilarious.
It's funny.
And it said McDonald's line backs up 2 miles because Dr. Fauci can't decide on what he wants to order.
It's so true. And that's the CDC guidelines in general. They've changed on things like masks. They've changed on things like, so even social distancing. I mean, remember originally it was 6 feet? And
now it's 3.
Now it's 3 feet, right? And how many people can you have in a room? Whether or not you should still have your mask on outside when you're vaccinated, right? Which is, again, asinine. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Should I wear my mask?
No.
Well, no, you shouldn't. That's an easy question. The fact is us crazy conspiracy theorists were right on most of these things all along. We've seen studies that have come out recently that say masks probably didn't do anything.
Yeah, there's actually a Louisville study that just came out.
That this almost certainly originated in a Wuhan virus that was doing gain and function research with funds that were supplied by us.
That doesn't matter though.
All of these things that we were crazy conspiracy theories for theorists for dealing with, or for assuming, were right.
Well,
right? And the CDC was just changing its narrative. It never changed its mind. It just changed its presentation.
I've gotten to where I actually like wearing my tinfoil hat now, so I'm fine with being on that side of the group.
I'm not one of those people that's going to go full on conspiracy, but you've made a compelling case, CDC. Let me put it that way. You've made it very tempting to join that crowd.
Back on the CDC though, that Christina Pashaw, which is DeSantis' press secretary, said the CDC arbitrarily singled out the cruise industry and their requirements are unlawful, as according to Florida law. The CDC cannot mandate vaccines nor passports because they're not, like you said, they're not an enforcement agency. They're not anything. Attempting to do so will only violate civil liberties, but also discriminates against families with children who enjoy vacations, while causing undue economic hardships to businesses that support the ports. So a lot of people are affected by this simple little cruise industry.
Yep.
Because there's a boat.
Especially in Florida.
Right.
Sure.
But that boat comes into a port. That port has a lot of businesses. And that's what we saw just kind of get creamed last year on all the coastlines, especially Texas coast being one of them, because no one was going there because you couldn't go to beaches.
Yeah.
It's super duper scary. So they closed down or kind of minimized what you could do. And so that affected everybody's businesses who were just there going, well, typically we get tourists and this is our hot season. No one's here.
Yeah. Yeah, you're killing a lot of industry that doesn't even necessarily affect the cruise lines, and not even necessarily tourist stuff. I mean, there are people that work those ports, right, that don't work in a tourist industry, right? And those people are suffering. You're getting a lot of blue collar people that are really hurting because of the fact that people can't use these cruise lines.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of say, well, a cruise ship has enough money, a cruise line. Well, that's not who's being affected here. You want to always find the person with the biggest bucks and say, because there's a person with big bucks, then come on, does it really matter? No, that's not the only person that's involved in this whole transaction.
There is a little bit of a complication here in the fact that cruises, first of all...
Ted Cruz's.
Yeah, well, cruise ships don't stay in the United States. That's another important thing, right? They go to sea. And when
maritime law.
Yeah, when you're at sea, you're at maritime law. And so you're not necessarily beholden to the laws of the United States at this point. That's
why you can gamble like literally on the ship.
Yeah. Now it can be argued that... this is different because you're actually talking about policy which applies to people who are boarding the ship in the United States. Mm-hmm. But, let's take a little beyond that, right? Ships don't just port in the United States. I don't know about you, but I've been on a cruise before, and we went to Honduras and we went to Mexico. We went to Cozumel, right? What happens if one of those countries is saying, hey, you can't come into our country if you're not vaccinated for COVID, and you can't prove it,
That's
right?
the country's right.
That is the country's right. And at that point, I mean, what do? You just stay on the boat?
Have to. If you don't, if you're not abiding by the rules, it's a dumb rule, but that's a different country.
Yeah. When you're
make a point in a country you don't live in. See how well it goes for you.
When you're talking about different countries' laws, there is something to that. But as far as the business is concerned, I mean, when did it become anybody's business to ask me if I've had my shots? I know we've had this conversation before, and I get it, but it really matters. When did that become not a taboo? And we're
just getting so used to it and just not thinking like, it's no big deal.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're talking about this not being a big deal. It is a big deal. If you start setting a precedent,
you've been worn down and conditioned so much to where it's like, well, why wouldn't you tell somebody?
If you start setting a precedent that like HIPAA doesn't need to be a thing anymore, and you should just be allowed to disclose and inquire about people's medical history, because that's a dangerous precedent to set, and that's going to affect people beyond COVID. We can't allow that to happen because the line's got to be drawn somewhere when it comes to these sorts of things, and that's a great place to do it. Just be like, listen, sorry, you can't ask about medical information.
Yeah. The funny thing is for the cruise line, if they follow through with this and require them to show a passport, according to Florida law, it'll be subject to a fine of $5,000 per customer. Oh, that's one,
Wow.
2, 3. That's 15,000, 20,000.
Wow. Yeah, that'd be a great way to put the cruises out of business.
Yeah, but the thing is, who's going to blink first? Because DeSantis will have to bring the cruise line into court to enforce this. Because he can't just say like, well, that's how it works.
he'll do it.
But like you just said,
He'll do
that
it.
cruise line isn't just married to Florida. It has a lot of other things it has to go to. So from their standpoint, especially from their countries saying you have to do it, they're going, I have to abide by whatever country I port in.
Mm-hmm.
And because we know we're going to Mexico or whatever country, they're requiring this of us. You cannot get on this boat if you're not willing to show it.
You should tell. I mean, and that's one thing. Maybe
Maybe the
that
cruise
should
line
be.
just hand out, here's a PDF of the, just don't fill out the document.
Yeah.
Here's the PDF they're looking for. Here's the PDF they're looking for. We
Well,
already signed it for you.
I
Don't
think
worry.
a questionnaire is different than a passport, right? A questionnaire is different because we still do questionnaires we do medical questionnaires for people who travel to different countries about things like yellow fever and Zika virus.
Yeah.
Medical questionnaires, especially when you're talking about international travel, I don't have that big of an issue with it. But this whole idea of like you have to have some sort of evidence that you've had the vaccine and you need to be able to show that in order to participate in society is. I'm not
That
going to say
PDF,
it.
by the way, exists.
I know. I absolutely
Don't
know.
print it off and fill it out for yourself and just put like a doctor's signature on it to say you got it. Don't do that. But the PDF is definitely out there and it definitely exists. You can print it off yourself at home.
I think
don't
you should.
do that.
I think you should say though. I think that the cruise lines should be like, hey, just to let you know, this cruise is going to X country. X country has a policy that they are not allowed in without evidence that you've been vaccinated for COVID-19. So if you don't want to, if you don't want to do that, yeah.
You think the explanation is going to go over well with people though? Really? Especially in Florida?
I don't care. At that point, I don't care. I mean, because you're talking about another country, right? And so you say, listen,
But
either
if, from Florida's standpoint, you're just going to take that and go, well, I get it. No, you're going to be pissed off. Because
Yeah,
you're
you'll be
cruise.
pissed
I
off.
want to get back to normal life, and you're saying I can't do it because I don't have this magic piece of paper.
the cruise line is not saying that. The country that you're going to is saying that. And if you don't want to go to that country, you don't have to.
Just cruise America then.
Get another cruise. Yeah, do an Alaska cruise.
Those are awesome.
Those are nice.
We did
right?
one when I was up there for a mission trip.
There
Pretty cool.
are plenty of cruises that don't go to countries that are going to make a vaccine passport. And you know what? Here's the thing: if those countries start making that happen, cruise lines are going to start going there fewer times. They're going to have fewer. They're going to have fewer routes that go through those countries, and the countries will
it's the
suffer as a
basic thing
result.
of like, are you really serious about that? We're going to test your wallet, see if you're super serious. Because if not, then okay,
Yeah,
stick to
and-
your values. But all of a sudden that wallet gets light, you're like, all right, I'm sorry.
And again, I don't know about you, but if I own a cruise line and I'm getting less passengers on cruises that go to this country because of the vaccine passport, then I'm just not going to do those routes anymore.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're getting left
But
out.
again, it's going to be who's going to blink first. It boils down to, because he has to take them into court.
There are few political laws in the world. Like there's few like just absolute rules in politics, right? There is don't get involved in a land war in Asia, right? Don't go up against a Sicilian with death when death is on the line. And what was the other one? Oh yeah, don't play chicken with Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
That's not a good idea. He will take you to court.
Dude has some high ambitions, so he is happy to be like, let's do this, because all I'm going to do is make my base all ginned up.
All right, let's talk about Texas. This is a Texas podcast. Let's go to topic the second.
Star-Spangled Banner. Oh, say can you see?
Jose, can you see?
Jose, can you see?
All right.
If you play sports in Texas, you also got to play the Star-Spangled Banner. This is according to Texas Tribune. We passed a nice bill. They are calling it the Star-Spangled Banner Protection Act. A little wordy, but all right. That would require any professional sports team with a contract in the Texas state government to play the national anthem before the start of a game. That's the crux of it. So
Okay.
So Texas Rangers, Dallas Mavericks. Anybody who plays in Texas, you got to play it.
And this law was specifically designed
Because
for
of
you,
Cuba.
Dallas Mavericks. For you, Cubes, you annoying
No,
sack
you
of...
can manage your team how you want to, but you're going to play that.
You're going to play the anthem.
House Republicans defeated several proposed amendments when they were trying to pass this through. The Senate passed the bill last month with an overwhelming support.
It had some trouble getting through the
only
House.
2
but
votes against it.
The Senate was like, we're...
Yeah, the House had like some trouble. The Senate had only 2 votes against it. Yeah.
And you know what? You should play the Star-Spangled Banner before sporting events. You should. Because you want to know why? Because sports are a unifying thing. The idea of sports is that it's something that you can do and we can all get together and do as Americans.
And turn off the freaking politics.
Exactly. And it's something that we can unite as Americans and just enjoy the blessings of our country. Part of the fact that we get to enjoy these sports activities is a blessing of freedom, which is given to you by the United States of America and those who died defending her interests, right? So
yeah, remember that this Memorial Day. This will be
absolutely
released after Memorial Day, but still.
Absolutely. Hope you remembered that when you were stuffing your face with bratwurst during Memorial Day. But you should. Sorry, you should play the Star-Spangled Banner.
Some Democrats like you said, the House, they decried unconstitutional. Dan Patrick chose this to be a time to tweet about it. Sell a franchise and some Texas Patriots will buy it. We are the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Amen.
Like, all right, yeah,
Amen.
The bill's sponsor is a state rep named Dustin Burrows from Lubbock. Woo. He said this bill does not violate free speech because teams can still choose not to play the anthem and forego the funding and business relationship with the state. Basically, if you don't want funding from the state, you can totally do whatever you want to do. Yeah. But I know for a fact, because I was in Arlington when this happened and voted it down the first time the Texas Rangers tried this, most of those stadiums and everything that happens about those stadiums are paid by taxpayers instead of the owner, who has the means.
Yep.
That's the irritating thing, is like you have all this money, but you won't pay for your own stuff. That makes no sense to me.
If you're going to receive state funding, then you're going to...
So you can still forego it. Mm-hmm. That's fine. If you don't want to take it, that's fine. Give us our check back, though, because that's our check now. And the Burrows basically said it's very simple. If they do not want to play the national anthem, they don't take the tax dollars. This is the same thing as required by federal law. For example, the funding of highways way back, the national government said, we're going to fund your highways in each state as long as you make 21 years old, the drinking law. Louisiana, being a notable one, waited out, and their roads, as you can tell, if you've ever been to Louisiana, kind of show it.
Not the best.
But the federal government is allowed to have strings attached when it comes to funding. You don't get to have it blindly say, well, no, you're supposed to give it to me. That's not how this works.
Yeah.
If you're going to do what we ask you to do, then you're going to get this funding. But if you don't, you get no funding.
By the way, is the basis behind any other investor or customer, right? Yeah. Any customer can. I mean, when I buy groceries, I am assessing the requirement of I will give you this money, but I'm requiring that you give me the groceries, right? Mm-hmm. You let me take away the groceries.
Otherwise, I want this cheaper. Well, the price is what the price is.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're not gonna receive funding, right? There is an element of negotiation to the state. The state is not obligated to give you money, just in the same way as you are not obligated to obey the state's law, or well, not laws, but you're not obligated to obey the state's recommendations, right? You're not obligated to it. You just don't get the money. Works both ways, man. This is still a transaction, and I would argue for a couple of things. One, if it's Texas, you should also receive funding. You got to play the Stars at Night are big and
of course, I'm with you there.
Yeah, you gotta. That's got to be after the Star-Spangled Banner. And the other thing that I would require, and this is going to be a bit controversial, but you should play the Star-Spangled Banner. And if we are playing a team that is not from America, you don't got to play their stinking national anthem.
No, I don't care.
I'm sorry. I am so tired of when the Toronto Blue Jays come into town that I got to listen to "Oh Canada" like I care.
Most of them aren't even Canadian.
Like I care about a country that only exists because we choose to allow it to exist.
Yes, no.
Nope, don't care. Sorry. No. I actually did. This was a bit disrespectful.
I dare you, Canada. Bomb one thing of America. Y'all will be destroyed in a heartbeat. It's like, oh, that was easy.
The thing is
just
like...
a whole weekend. That's all it took.
I'm not even sure the Canadian military can make missiles that can hit Minnesota from Calgary. Like, I doubt that they'd have to go up to the border and throw it, right? The issue here is not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily need to be a political one. In fact, the Star-Spangled Banner, and by the way, the symbols of the United States are designed to be apolitical. Now, I know that
bring us together. We're all in the same blanket.
I know that seems controversial because, like, well, of course it's political. It's about a country. Yes, but it is. It's not. It's one of those things that we can all agree on, right? The issue here is that we are now disagreeing in a partisan way about things that are fundamental to the country. We're not disagreeing about things like tax rates. We're not disagreeing about things like gay marriage. We're disagreeing about things like America, good or bad. And our states and the people,
because we actually have it so good, we got to manufacture new things, so we're bad again.
And the people that do business in our states and people that do business in the United States and enjoy the freedoms thereof need to address. They need to make that clear that America is a good thing. If you do business in America, then and you're receiving money from the government of the United States, then your policy should be the United States is good.
Well, yeah, one of the irritating things that happened is one of the amendments that was tried to put up there was to play, Democrats wanted the teams to require to play both StarSpangled Banner and Lift Every Voice and Sing, because apparently that's the Black national anthem. I didn't realize that came about. Don't really know when that got voted on.
So racist.
There's
That
no,
is racist.
there's
That
no
is so
such
racist.
thing as a Black national anthem. If
there is a Black national anthem.
No, there's not.
It's the Star-Spangled Banner.
Yes,
That's the
okay,
Black national anthem.
Because if there is, that means all Americans aren't protected under the same Constitution. You can say, well, it doesn't apply the same way. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
We have to. There is some tweaks that I will agree with you on, but overall, we literally fought a war against each other to make sure people with simple extra melanin in their skin were seen as people and no longer cattle.
Seen as equal
and
under
then
the
it
law.
took all the way until 1964, and then we said, yeah, we're going to put this more documentation because apparently y'all didn't get the point the first time.
Yep.
That's been there, and we just discussed earlier. Affirmative action is done because the only reason affirmative action is allowed is because people recognize the scars of slavery. Mm-hmm. So that's why it has been allowed to put in. It's a discriminatory law. It effectively says you get to have an extra step up based on your race, which it'd be unfair any other realm. But I wasn't black. Black people have had some struggles, if you didn't know, in our country. So that's why it's allowed.
Yeah.
You do not get an extra anthem. Like there's no. America has jumped a lot more hoops to try to remedy the slavery thing, and it never will go away. And I'm with it. It'll never go away because you can't erase history. But you're constantly saying you got to do this next thing, this next thing, this next thing. You're just going to essentially separate yourself again. And by making your own national anthem, you're trying to separate yourself again. So what, MLK did nothing?
Yeah.
But his speech means nothing. Come on, because that's exactly what that does.
The fact, and it's not even about an extra national anthem. It's about being a different national anthem, right? The only reason you'd want a different national anthem is because you believe you're a different nation.
You're not.
And you're not.
I actually have a problem with African American. I do. Because we're all American. Like I don't need a qualifier. I'm not white American.
And most
I'm
people
American.
that classify themselves as African American have never been to Africa.
Yeah, it's a semantic thing, but you're not wrong. But yeah, I don't like qualifiers like Mexican Americans, or just American, because we're all under, like I said, we're all under the same blanket. Mm-hmm. Why would I want to differentiate myself with another person? Like, oh, their color's different. So I would like to believe we can kind of get past that part. Why do we have to keep putting qualifiers and everything?
Yeah.
But whatever.
And here's the thing about Mark Cuban. And by the way, this is the entire NBA, not just Mark Cuban. I just have a personal thing about Mark Cuban because he is so visible and he represents the state of Texas and he's doing it very poorly, in my opinion.
Right now.
But Mark Cuban understands the idea that the country that pays you is the country that you should respect and sort of lift up the plaudits thereof, right?
Lift up that voice and say.
Well, no, he understands that, right? He understands, because again, my premise is United States is what's doing business. It's the freedoms of the United States that allow you to do this business. Therefore, you should respect the United States by playing their national anthem. And Mark Cuban understands that. The only difference is the country that's paying Mark Cuban, at least to the highest degree, in the United States anymore, is it?
Is it China?
It might be China.
China.
It might be China, because you know what? There's this whole controversy about whether or not we should play the Star-Spangled Banner, but there's another controversy as whether I can bring a sign that says Free Hong Kong to your basketball game. Because if I do, I will get kicked out. If I bring a Hong Kong flag to your basketball game, you will kick me out. Why? Because that's disrespectful to the Chinese, right? And so you get what I'm talking about, Mark Cuban. You know where your bread is buttered, and it's not in the United States at this point. And that... You talk about something that boils my blood, right? If you're gonna play for China, then go play in China. I don't care. Dirk's not here anymore. I won't miss you for a second. Leave Luka. Leave Luka because we kind of like him.
We do.
Okay?
I like Luka.
I like Luka. We could start a one-on-one basketball league, and Luka will just be the Texas.
If that was the case, he'll kill it.
He'll be the Texas basketball player, right?
But there's a lot of amendments that did come up just to kind of rotate it back to the actual
Sure, yeah, let's go
subject
back
here.
to the actual subject. I'm sorry.
Burroughs, he opposed the amendments because there was a bunch allowed, but this was a tactic because smartly, Democrats know how the tactic works.
Yeah.
If I can delay it enough to where it doesn't meet a certain deadline, then it's effectively dead.
It's good political strategy.
It is. And he opposed it. And he stated, with the deepest amount of respect to my friends and colleagues, because he wanted to avoid any changes to the bill because it would slow its progress, the governor's desk, and it might not. And this is, by the way, is the final week of the legislative session.
Yeah.
But it might not make it to his desk. So he said no to all of it because then that would require a whole new committee. He's like, no, I know what you're doing. We're not doing that. We're just going to pass this one, and that's it.
Yep. And I'm going to say that this is a good thing. I think this is incontrovertibly a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, if the national anthem or if the national politics won't take a stand on this, then fine, do it state by state. That's how you do it.
Sports is supposed to be a unifying thing, as is the national anthem. The fact that it's not is a tragedy. And I mean, even here in Texas, I know we're all about federalism in Texas, but we are still a part of the United States of America, and Texas should defend the United States of America. And when I say defend, I'm not just talking about militarily. I'm not just talking about from a police perspective. I'm talking about on a social level. Texas should, with one voice, say it is good to be American.
Correct.
Exactly. It is good to be American because being American is what allows us to be Texan. Let's go to topic number 3.
Woo! Chicago.
Yeah, let's get out of Texas.
Talk about
Chicago.
This is a new policy for police about on-foot pursuits. This came out, I think, yesterday or the day before. The most notable, Chicago Police Department will not pursue on foot. This is according to chicagopolice.org, so right from the source.
Goodness. What's the name of this policy? Is there a name of this policy?
It's on-foot pursuit policy.
If there is a name of the policy, it should be called, just let them go.
Basically.
Yeah.
They will not pursue on foot, like I said, for any offense that's less than a Class A misdemeanor, because you somehow just know. Mm-hmm. Any traffic offense, do not disregard or endanger the safety of others. So if I pull you over, you happen to have something on you, you book it. Well, no, don't chase me. It's fine.
Well, you're not going to do an on-foot pursuit if it's a traffic stop because they're in a car.
Right, but if they stop you, give me your license and registration. No.
And they get out of the car and run?
Leave.
Oh, you bet I'm going after them.
No, they pulled him up for speeding.
Don't care. Don't care. You're fleeing the scene. You are fleeing. You are being detained, and you are fleeing the scene. All I know is I would say one thing. Even if you can't pursue them, I'm impounding that car.
Yeah,
I'm impounding that car. That is evidence.
The bad thing is it outlines alternatives to foot pursuits, which should always be considered, as it says. Maybe establish surveillance or containment area, or apprehending suspect at another time or place. After they committed another crime because you didn't bother, enforcing the crime the first time.
Yeah.
And this allows
and that's provided you know who they are. That's provided they gave you identification.
The dangerous thing is it allows for Monday morning quarterbacking. Because after each foot pursuit, which, by the way, you have to get supervisor approval for. Before I chase this guy,
the chief of police did come out, and I want to say this with full discretion. The chief of police did come out and say that that's not the case. That you have to get supervisor approval ahead of time.
Okay,
but
you can still do it after the fact.
But after the fact, yeah,
because new policies mandate that after action review is going to be happening for every CPD of foot pursuits.
Yep.
CPD, sorry, Chicago Police Department.
Go ahead. Continue. Sorry.
Officers and supervisors will not be disciplined for deciding not to engage in or continue a foot pursuit. Because, it was less dangerous, so good job.
Okay. It's probably not dangerous for the person that gets hurt by that criminal later.
It literally saves your skin to just decide not to chase them instead of chasing them and enforcing the law.
Yep. You're about to make prosecutors' jobs real fun.
Oh, yeah.
Real fun. Anyway, if a prosecutor can't get evidence because they didn't pursue, because it was more dangerous not to pursue, they determined that it wasn't a good idea not to pursue. If that's the case, then you got nothing. I'm sorry. It's going to be very difficult prosecuting criminals in Chicago if this is going to remain the policy.
Maybe that's the point.
Well, one could argue that it might possibly be.
Well, murder rates are up, but hey, guys, the racism problem, not anything else.
Given the science is back mayor of Chicago, I wouldn't doubt that. Right?
Oh, the mayor. We're going to talk about the mayor?
You want to talk about
Oh,
Mrs.
Lori Lightfoot?
Mrs.
Let's
Lori
talk about the mayor.
Lightfoot. Mrs. Lori Bug-Eyed Lightfoot.
Well, Miss Lightfoot with her stunning hair, because, by the way, she put a stay-at-home order and then violated her stay-at-home order by getting her hair done.
Because she cares about hygiene, unlike you plebes.
Well, she cares about hygiene, but her also excuse was, well, I'm on national TV all the time. I'm the face of Chicago. Okay. Okay.
You're the face of Chicago.
Well, she won't give interviews to white reporters. That was stated, I just can't believe that's just like, yeah, it's no big deal. The leader of the country's apparently third largest city, which Chicago is, was offering sit-down interviews exclusively with reporters of color.
And I know that this is a cliche thing. I know that this is overused. Flip it. Just flip it.
Yeah.
Just say, I'm a reporter and I'm only taking reports from white people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
reasoning is
that's obscene.
Yeah,
That's
well, her
horrible.
reasoning is she believes this is a fight for diversity and she must do it because she's about halfway into her mayoral term, which is 4 years. She did this as a 2-year thing. So I guess she's like, all right, now I'm going to really show you who my colors are. No pun intended, but there you go.
Well, I'm gonna show you. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, she's showing us exactly who she is. And by the way, we always knew who you were, Lori Lightfoot. Nobody was hiding the ball on that.
Yeah.
Mrs. Science is back. You remember that when she came out with that video after
Science is back.
Science is back, baby. Joe Biden's in the White House.
Yeah, what's funny is
Joe
that
Biden can't spell science. What are you talking about?
not today. Today's a bad day.
It's a bad day, Joe.
But I really do think that if she's really true about this, then Candace Owens and Thomas Sowell should put her on blast like, oh, I'll do an interview. Come on. And just keep putting it. I requested this
Larry
time.
Elder, Brandon Tatum.
She won't do it.
Carol Swain.
No, she
any
wouldn't
of
do
these
it.
people. Yeah, no, she's not going to go to that because she doesn't care about the color of your
Well,
skin.
Gregory Pratt, he's a Chicago Tribune City Hall reporter. He stated that he's Latino, by the way, and a reporter for Chicago Tribune, whose interview request was granted for a certain day. However, he asked the mayor's office to lift the condition on people of color because he said this is wrong for obvious reasons.
Yeah, because
and
it's
when they
racist.
said no, he respectfully canceled the interview because he stated politicians do not get to choose who covers them.
Good for
Who's
you,
a part
Greg.
of the press corps is the press corps. You can say, well, that's Fox, he's an idiot. She's CNN, she's an idiot. Doesn't matter. They get the right to question you about whatever they deem as being important, and you got to sit there as a politician because this is what you volunteered for, to be peppered with questions. That's a part of the job.
Good for you, Gregory.
Yeah.
Not all heroes wear capes, man. Here's to you, buddy.
he is wearing a cape.
That's great.
But here's the fun part. Now she's being sued. Because it's racist.
Yes.
It's completely racist.
It's absolutely racist.
She's being sued by Daily Caller, or a guy from Daily Caller. I believe Daily Caller is suing on behalf of their white reporter. Yeah. The suit filed by Judicial Watch, which is a group. They're waiting on this. They're like, we're chomping the bit. We got a good, easy case. Let's do it. Claims a Lightfoot violated. The guy's name is Catanese. I think that was a lot closer than usual.
Yeah, that's Catanasi.
Oh,
It's a very
up.
Italian name.
Come on.
Very Italian.
But they
Catanasi.
violated Caitlin's First Amendment and equal protection rights.
That's a totally different politician.
Whatever. The lawsuit asked the court to force Lightfoot to give him, Catanese, an interview and also pay the plaintiff's attorney fees and litigation costs. I don't think it goes far enough, but they should say, no, you just got to repeal this whole order. Not just this one guy you got to get an interview to. Just anybody that happens to be white, fine. And she could have actually done this stealthily. I don't know why she made it a mandate, because eventually people are going to recognize,
this isn't about policy, this is about posturing.
You're only taking interviews with people who are of color. Yeah. Like, eventually someone would notice that. But when you made it the outright policy, well, now you just left it open for
this is about posture. It's a posturing thing. It's not a policy thing. She knew that this was likely going to get shot down.
What are we doing right now? We're talking about her. So
exactly,
it worked for her.
But okay, so let's get back to the police pursuit thing. So the police pursuit thing, basically, if you really look at it from a policy perspective, there's not a whole lot that is different than what. There's not a whole lot that's different than what the police is already doing, right? You have to make sure that there's probable cause for a felony, right? You have to use common sense and make sure that you're not going to be putting people in danger when you do this. You have to make sure, there's all of these. You have to make sure your body cam is on. All of this is already police procedure. All of this is already pretty standard. The problem, so they say, okay, well then what's the problem, right? We're just reinforcing what's already there. First of all, there are a couple of things in this policy that are a little different than what police already does, and that's an issue. But the problem is you're basically coming out and outright stating that you are putting that we're not going to have your back if you choose to pursue on foot. That you're going to have to make a case every single time you choose to pursue on foot. And the fact is, you can't necessarily make a case for a snap decision. Now, I understand why they're doing this. This is in response to the Adam Toledo shooting.
Yeah.
And
who had a gun and was shooting at
the
cars.
kid had a gun, and he was shooting indiscriminately at cars. And this kid
Was it
fled.
2 or 3 in the morning?
Yeah, and you're going to not chase this kid that's been firing a weapon at a highway? No, you're going to chase that kid. And yes, he had a gun. He ditched the gun, but the officer didn't know it at the time.
We got to feel bad, though, because he was 13.
Tragically, this kid got shot, and it is a tragedy. But you know what? That tragedy is not on the officer. And frankly, I don't think that tragedy is on Adam Toledo necessarily 100%. That tragedy is on your parents. I'm sorry. The people who raised this kid... I was
never allowed to be out that late in the middle of the night.
The people out there crying about Adam Toledo and he was such a good boy and all this kind of stuff, this is your fault. This is a tragedy that is on you. You need to make sure that you're putting the responsibility where it lies. It lies on the parents of Adam Toledo. It does not lie on the police officers, and you don't need to respond with this level of
vitriol.
Yeah, and frankly, insanity. Right? It's this concept of we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're going to say, okay, because this one unfortunate incident happened, we're gonna just make it to where you can't not even necessarily have anything to do with shooting. You're gonna be able to pursue.
Yeah.
You're gonna be able to pursue on foot somebody who's potentially
dangerous. It's easier
dangerous.
just to not to because you have less paperwork. So.
And the other thing is, you're talking about
kind of leaving it back to the criminals again. So it's like, oh yeah, that's going to work real well. It's like they'll take care of themselves.
You're talking about
bad idea.
You're talking about making officers fear to be sued
in a city that has gone up multitudes of the murder rate since COVID because lockdown happened, and they've just been murdering people. Like this past weekend, over 50 people.
Yeah. And by the way,
no one blinks an eye.
has demonstrated this city that they are not in favor of their police officers. They do not have the back of their police officers.
I don't know why you'd work as a police officer. It's like, I just quit.
They're going to favor the criminals over the officer. And when you put in this policy that says that foot pursuits that foot pursuits now have to be brought forward as a case, right? They say when you go to the court, part of the questioning is going to be, why did you choose to pursue on foot? And if you can't,
who's doing a crime? Was it a Class A misdemeanor?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
And you can't provide all of this evidence, the case gets thrown out, right? This criminal, regardless of what they were doing, the case can get thrown out because you chose to pursue.
Or you
and by the way, you
could
get prosecuted.
You open yourself up to a suit. Well, it's actually a Class C misdemeanor. Like maybe it won't be as easily sued as I'm saying as it is right now. But now you may get a ping on your record, on your permanent record, because it's Class C, didn't follow rules. Mm-hmm. I literally saw the guy do this the thing. Yeah. Why can I not just go chase him down and say, let's see if we can talk to him? Why is he doing this? Maybe a talk to is all this guy needed. And you've seen things all the time where something happens, like maybe in a grocery line or whatever, a cop will just stealthily go, I'm going to get their groceries, whatever. Because you hear the conversation, you realize they don't have enough or whatever. And maybe you realize like, hey man, I just need some bread. My family's hungry. All right.
Yep.
I'll pay for this bread. How many? You need 2 loaves? I'll buy you 2 loaves, peanut butter, jelly, whatever, to help you out. You didn't have to steal it. Now you know there's people out there. And if you have another trouble, come talk to me. I'm happy to help you. But if I can't chase you down to get that conversation to maybe help you out, then yeah, never mind. You'll solve your own problem.
And by the way, that is a majority of police interactions. And I'm not talking about 60%. I'm not talking about 70%. I'm not talking about 90% of police interactions. I'm talking about 99.999% of police interactions, and perfectly fine. Cordially, right? The police officer says, have a nice day, and you go on your merry way. Do you probably get a ticket? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of
your day kind of got a little crummy.
Is there a possibility if you're committing a crime you get arrested? Probably, right? But because of the 0.001% of things, right, less than 20 people out of the millions of police shootings that happen on an annual basis, we are going to punish cops and make it more difficult to do their job. Now, again, I know that this is going to be a controversial thing for our friends that are on the left that watch the show. No, not just go to private security. Society will get better. Your life will get better if you make it easier for police to do their jobs.
Yeah.
It's going to, because 99.99999% of police encounters. Now, I'm not saying 99.999% of all police are good people. There are a lot of police officers that are kind of jerks, right? I get it, right? Not every police officer is a good person, but virtually all of police interactions end cordially, they end respectfully, and they help us maintain an ordered society, right? They do what they're supposed to do. But because of an extreme outlier. We are making it more difficult for that to happen. And this is going to result in more death. It is going to result in more crime, for which you will have no excuse. And here's something that I want to point out. And this is speaking to the Texans out there.
Oh, here we go.
If Texans come out with a defund the police, which they never will, right? But if Texans come out with defund the police, I'm totally for it. As long as you let me keep my guns.
Oh, yes.
As long as you let me keep my guns and you say defund the police, great. Right? Or even, here's the thing, defund the police and don't let me keep my guns. I'll keep them anyway because who are you going to call?
Yeah, I'm just going to lie to you.
Yeah, well, we're going to call a tax auditor. Great. Fine.
Get that calculator
Right?
clicking.
If you do not have the ability to enforce the law, then I'm going to defend myself. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to call the police.
I'd rather have someone else who's professionally trained to do it, but if you want me to be the person, okay.
I want to call the police, and you don't want me to. I mean, I don't want to be that person, but if you go with defund the police, great. Because there's more lead in this house than a 1980s paint store. That's what I'll be telling the tax auditor when they show up.
I'm just going to tell them I lost them all. I don't know what you're talking
The
about.
reality here is you need the police, and you need the police able to do their job. And
I just feel bad for
accidents-
Chicago. I
Yeah.
feel so bad for Chicago. If you have to live there, I am so sorry.
Will
It's
accidents
going to
happen?
get much worse than what it has been already.
Will accidents happen? Yes. Will tragedy ensue? Yes, they will. It's going to, it's going to happen regardless, right? Like James said earlier, we live in a fallen world, okay? But there's going to be accidents when it comes to crime, even if the police aren't there. In fact, there's going to be more accidents, right? You cannot base an entire policy. You cannot punish an entire group of people based on a single outlier. And for those of you that are in Chicago, I'm with you, man. I feel bad for you. And you know what my recommendation is? Come to Texas.
Yeah.
Come to Texas.
Come to Freedom Land.
If you don't want to be in that oppressive state, come to Texas. We will welcome you with open arms because I understand that you've had dark days in Chicago. But here in Texas, friends, the stars at night are big and bright. We'll see you next week.